Well, I'm very sentimental. John I don't think he has a sentimental bone in his body, you know. I mean, we could get done with this car and he'd be like, someone will come up to him and offer him some money for it and be like, we ought to sell that thing. So, but I will never part from this, and that's what I'm really excited about, is just knowing that we did this together.
Welcome to Season 2 of MTE's Plugged In Podcast. This podcast focuses on the world of electric vehicles. We combine expert interviews and personal stories to educate and inform listeners about electric vehicles. So, whether you're an early adopter who has been driving an EV for years, or if you're just starting your research, this podcast is for you.
Hi, I'm Brandon Wagoner.
And I'm Amy Byers, and welcome to MTE's Plugged In Podcast. Today we are on location in Lebanon, Tennessee to visit with Brandon and his father-in-law, John. And y'all are converting this 1961 Austin Healey bug-eyed Sprite that is sitting here behind me from an ICE vehicle to an electric vehicle. So we're going to talk about that today. So welcome to the podcast. First of all, I want to know, you've been working on this for some time. I'm not sure. You'll have to tell me when you started. But also tell me why. Like, what made you think, oh, we should do this. This is a good idea.
Yeah, well, I guess I'll start on that. So I used to have a sailboat, and I got tired of having to pay the slip fees. Having a boat's expensive, you know. So I sold the boat, and I told my wife, John's daughter, I said, I'd love to get a little MGB, you know, and with the sailboat money. And John said, you don't want an MGB, you know. And I said, well, it kind of led into this conversation where I told John, you know, you built all these British cars. I would have loved to have had one of those, and I just couldn't afford them at the time, you know. So that sort of started the conversation, and then it led to where we're at right now. Do you remember what happened after that?
What had happened actually before that was I'd gone to a car show. I thought I was through rebuilding British cars. You know, I thought it was done. And there was one for sale on a trailer, and I went and looked at it, shouldn't have, and it had no rust, and that's very unusual for an old British car. And so I wound up buying that car, and I brought it home, and I got the engine running, got the brakes working all the way around, got where I could drive it up and down the road. And that's about when this conversation that Brandon's talking about occurred. And I said, well, I've got this notion on this car to turn it into an electric vehicle. And I had just never done that before, and I thought it'd be an interesting project. And I told him, you're welcome to buy this car from me if you want this car. I don't care, because I really didn't plan on doing another car anyway. And so that's what happened. Brandon purchased the car from me, and we started getting parts and pieces, and here we are today.
Here you are. So you're a car man from way back then. So how long have you been rebuilding British cars?
Since I was in college.
And is this just like a hobby that you...
Well, then it was a little more than a hobby. I found out I could take an old British sports car. It was only really a few years old then, but they turned to junk pretty quick. And people, they were new over here, and people didn't know how to work on them, and you could buy them cheap. So I'd buy them cheap, and they're real simple cars. They were easy to work on, actually, and I would fix them up, maybe paint them, and I'd sell them. They were easy to sell. College kids loved them.
Oh, yeah.
So I did that to make money to help me through school, and I just enjoyed doing it and done it ever since.
Yeah. They are impressive when you pass one on the street. You're always going to turn your head and look at them, I think, and they're fun. I know we were talking earlier, my father, he had many little British sports cars as I was growing up, and they are fun. We would get out on the curvy country roads and drive, and they're fun cars. So
what's funny about John, though, is he would build them, and he would take a year or 2 years to build some of these cars, and then as soon as it was running, you know, we would come over and visit it, and I'd be like, where's the car? Oh, I sold it. You know, and he wouldn't keep it for maybe a few weeks or maybe a month, you know. He just loved to build them. He didn't.
Yeah. The fun was the project.
Right. So when did you start on this car? Like how far in are we in to this project?
I think we're 4 years. I thought
probably about that.
So is this
probably
the longest
rebuild
you've ever had?
Probably is, yes.
Yeah. Well, a lot of that was because it's super expensive.
Oh yeah.
And so, it took me a while to save up, and then we had to buy the batteries. And I remember we bought the batteries right in the middle of COVID, so that was 2020. It took me a long time to save up for those. We bought them from China, and it was like a 3 or 4 month delivery for the batteries to come in. Yeah. So, and then every time you turn around, it's like everything is $1,000. Like, oh, we need this. It's $1,000, but the batteries, the motor, those were the first few things we bought, and that was several thousand a piece. And so that's one reason it's taken us so long to get the parts.
And we're not on a timer, frame.
Right. So have you gotten like all the big components that you need? Are you still, I mean, when I look at this, and we'll link maybe in the show notes to a tour or something of the car where you can really see in there, but I'm just like, there's really nothing in there.
Yeah, I know. Imagine what my wife feels like when she keeps seeing these bills, and it's like, well, there's nothing in that car.
There's nothing in the car. There's not even a seat.
Yeah. I mean, the big components we pretty much purchased. There's the next big component would be like a dash. I mean, there's some really cool stuff. Anyone that worked in the auto industry is familiar with CAN bus protocol. Well, all of these devices speak CAN bus, and you can get a CAN bus dashboard that will give you all these diagnostics on how much range you have, how much battery life and stuff. That we haven't bought yet, but we have everything we need to make it go. Now, obviously, it needs to be painted, and it needs to be cleaned, and the interior. We have all the seats and the stuff that go
in there.
We just took it out to make it easier to put, but. Yeah. I think we've got most of the big ticket items.
So some of the obstacles obviously was, delay in shipments, finding the parts, saving up the money for the parts, that type of thing. So now that that's behind you, were there any other obstacles, like even engineering obstacles? I mean, you don't automatically know how to, especially, for you did ICE vehicles, so you could probably do that in your sleep. But this is a whole nother ball game here. So were there some learning curve obstacles? Were there a lot of research you had to do?
There was. I've got an electronic background from work. Okay. I've been in electronics most all my life. And so that wasn't scary for me. I thought, well, I can handle that, And as we got into it, so much of it now is digitized. It's digital control equipment and all. I have Brandon here for that.
There you go.
He can talk CAN bus and all of that stuff. Yeah. So that made that easy. If it were just me, I probably wouldn't use the battery management system, which is all the digital stuff. Mm-hmm. It would probably be more mechanical, just switches and latches and relays, that type of thing.
So I guess y'all are the perfect team because you're coming at it from two different sides, and then you need both of those to make this run, so to speak. So that's good.
It's been fun because we've taught each other some things. Early on we had a box that we had to build to hold the batteries, and John taught me how to weld. So that was, I'd never done that before, and I had a chance to learn that.
And what little boy doesn't want to learn how to weld?
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
Yeah,
right. Welding is fun.
Yeah, it's a blast. And then we had a chance that I had the terminal open and was showing him how to send commands to the battery management system and look at. And so there's times I'll be at work and he'll send me a text and he'll be like, "Look, we're in high voltage control mode," and so it's been fun to be a part of a project where if I would have worked on any of his British cars with him, I would have just been sitting there handing him wrenches, and to be a part of it and contribute a little bit has been fun. He contributes the majority of it. I just, every now and then I can play a little role. It's fun.
Oh, absolutely. A big role.
Yeah. So you said when you bought this car, you got it running as an ICE vehicle.
Right.
And then you just kind of took
removed
all that. Oh my goodness. So I guess when you're starting on something like this, like if you had, the first step, get the car, getting running as a car, I guess. Would you even need to do that step? Like if
you would need the brakes to work, but you don't need the engine to work at all, or the transmission. We're not using a transmission.
You do need to make sure that it's running as an ICE vehicle, so you can test these other components you're going to use. Would that be your advice?
Right. It wouldn't hurt, but it's not mandatory that the engine ever runs.
Right.
It really isn't.
But it is nice to know that the brakes will stop the
Yes,
car.
yes. Stopping can be very important.
Yes, I can see that. So,
And there's, as far as starting, there's a million ways to start, because we agonized for a couple of months. Do we go with an AC motor or a DC motor? Which sounds very much like who cares, but there was a lot of consequences depending on which one we went with. And then do we go with a transmission or not? And we opted on a DC motor. Everyone uses AC motors now. This is going to be basically out of style before we even get started.
It'll be old school.
It will be old school. We also decided we don't want a transmission. So, but part of that was because we needed the space for the batteries, and if we have a transmission there, that's less room we have to put batteries. So,
well, I know we talked about that a little bit before. I was looking in. I was like, are all of those batteries going to fit back here? And you said it would. We'll see. We'll have to come back and see if that happens.
yeah, we think we can get 40. So there's 48 cells. We think we can get 42 of them back here and 6 in the front.
Okay, so you're going to have to utilize both areas.
And they'll be laying on their sides and that sort of thing.
And I know we talked about that. This is not a trunk. This does not open. So it is a tight squeeze for you to get them in there. But then you've got to, I guess, hook them up once they're in there. So it's going to be a little maneuvering. You may have to go to the chiropractor after that.
This car was not a good choice, really, as far as putting batteries in.
No, but it's going to look so good
It will.
on the road. It really, really will.
That's another reason we're doing all this work outside. Once they're installed, I don't want to get them out again.
Absolutely.
So we're trying to do everything we can with the batteries outside the vehicle before we put them in.
So what has to happen to make this street worthy?
You mean after it's running and all? Or?
Well, at this point.
Oh, at this point, what
all
do we
do
do?
you have to do
Well,
where you can get this out on the road?
Yeah, our next step will be getting the batteries in the boxes in the trunk area, and we've still yet to build a box for the front area to put batteries in. That will be the next thing. We have some of the equipment already mounted where it's going to be up front, and once we get all that in, all wired up, it will run.
Yeah. But there's not going to be any storage space, so this is just like a round town car, right?
Absolutely, it's just for fun.
Just a fun around the
Take
town.
the cars and coffee and stuff like that.
Yeah. Well, I know we definitely want to see this at our events and stuff. I think people will be really interested in it.
And we've made a commitment to have it at the next big show next summer.
Oh goodness! So you've got a year.
We've got
You're
a
going to have to
year.
get on it.
It may not be painted.
It'll be running.
It'll be running. That's okay.
Yeah.
That'll work. So once you have finished a project like this, and this may be for any car you do, this may be your regular cars you've been working on when you take old cars like that, but maybe specifically for the EVs, is there any special things you have to go through with the state to get it on the road, to get it licensed, to get it?
It's actually licensed now. It could be licensed right now. It has a title. It's just, it's no issue at all. The state won't even know if it's electric or gas. They don't really care, I guess.
Yeah. Now, will you, because you're building this yourself, charging, will you be able to pull up at any of these chargers? I mean, are you doing anything special? Are you going to have to do something, in your garage or whatever to charge? Or is it the same as what you're going to do with your Tesla? I mean, let's talk a little bit about charging it.
Really good question. It will be able to charge at any level 2 charger, or I think any supercharger. I mean, the charger we bought. So the thing about these cars is they have an onboard charger, and that's the thing that really tells. What we call a charger is technically called an EVSE, electric vehicle supply equipment. And what the onboard charger does is basically, instead of the superchargers and stuff pushing electricity, that actually pulls electricity. So this charger that we're going to have on here will tell whatever we interface it to, this is how much I can handle, and it won't charge more than what it's designed for. But we'll be able to plug it up to whatever, and it'll be able to charge at level 2.
So when you're driving around, are you going to have something on the dashboard that says you have this much left, or like a regular?
Yeah, it'll.
Will it have the features of like a new mod?
It won't be obviously as aesthetically pleasing.
Right. Right.
But there's low end ways of calculating your mileage, and there's higher end ways. We'll probably try to hit in the middle where we can get some diagnostics, but maybe not get the Cadillac version of that.
Yeah.
But it's a 27 kWh battery. The system that we're gonna have in it is pretty good size. We think with as small as it is, we think we'll have over 100 miles of range.
Yeah.
So we do want to be able to have an estimate of how much range we have left. And there's devices out there that will be able to interface to our equipment and tell us that.
So this last question, I want to ask you individually. So we'll start with you, John.
Okay.
First of all, what advice do you have to anybody out there listening that's thinking, I'm going to take on a project like this?
It's a big project. It really is. And it's a little daunting. You need some electronic background. You need a lot of mechanical car background. But if you have that, it's doable.
Yeah.
It's doable. It will be a little expensive, but it's cheaper than buying a Tesla.
That's true.
But no, if you like a challenge, and I like challenges, and I think Brandon does, it's interesting, it's fun.
Yeah. What about you?
So to me, I'm not at a stage of life where I really want to take on a huge project like this. I'm going to be happy to have a vehicle that my father-in-law built. He's built all these cars. There have been times where I've tried to go hunt down. I've thought about, I'm just going to go hunt down some of those cars. What I will always love about this car, whether it's electric or if we just stayed with the ICE, is seeing it and knowing we did this together.
Oh, yeah.
That I'm a very sentimental person.
He is. I want to say, y'all both won the prize for best father-in-law and best son-in-law. So that's great.
Well, I'm very sentimental. John I don't think he has a sentimental bone in his body, I mean, we could get done with this car and he'd be like, someone will come up to him and offer him some money for it and be like, we ought to sell that thing. So, but I will never part from this. And that's what I'm really excited about, is just knowing that we did this together. And it is a challenge, but what's funny is after a while it starts just clicking. It's just like everything in life. You have to spend a lot of time with it and you get really frustrated and you make your list and it looks very overwhelming, and then you start just doing a little bit of it, and before you know it, you're like, wow, I'm starting to learn about this stuff, and then you can answer other people's questions. One thing I think is really important is try to find some folks that have done it. We met some people through the car club, actually.
We actually have.
Some of the parts we bought were from a guy in the car club. Wow. And he had done this kind of work. So he's been a great resource. That's a huge part of it. Find someone that's done it.
Yeah. And there are books out there. I've bought a few books, and we've gone through those books. And of course, there's YouTube.
Yeah.
And when you do this over and over, YouTube books, it's like you say, you start understanding how all this works and how it all fits together and all the safety things you need to have involved with it. And you just get better at it.
Yeah.
It gets to where it's not too hard.
It's funny, you get all these wiring diagrams though, and you realize this diagram is 90% of what we want, but we're doing something a little different. And so you have to take and pull from everything.
Yeah. And we've modified diagrams to make it work like we want it to work.
It's a unicorn. It's going to be the only one that's like it. So,
well, I'm excited to see it, and I know you made. We won't hold you to it, but we're all going to keep our fingers crossed that it's going to be at the next drive-in supercharged cruise-in event. I know we'll all be excited to see it, and I know in a minute we're going to take a tour. And we will link that tour in our show notes so everybody can look at that tour. But so Brandon and John, thank you both so much for being here. I can tell that you both have a excitement and passion for this project that's very contagious. So I'm sure that some of our listeners out there are going to be like, I want to do this now. So if you have some questions that you have for Brandon and John, be sure to email us at evcarclub@mte.com. And as always, if you have questions or if you have topics you would like for us to cover, email us at evcarclub@mte.com. And for more information on MTE's Drive EV programs or the EV Car Club, you can go to driveev.com. Until next time, plug in, power up, and drive safe.